All right. So here we are, week 2 of our series on the 4 needs that we have. And if you remember last week, and if you didn't watch it, I'll put a link down below. But we have 4 basic needs in our soul: love, acceptance, worth, and security. And last week we talked about love. And this week we want to talk about acceptance. And what we're doing is we're talking about the way that our culture has told us to meet those needs versus the way that the Bible tells us to meet those needs. So acceptance. Acceptance is pretty straightforward. It's just feeling accepted for who you are specifically. And our culture has said that the way that you get your need for acceptance met has been to just get a ton of friends. Find people who will accept you for who you are. This is where we end up with a lot of organizations, surf clubs and chess clubs and band and, just all these kind of clubs and groups that people join. If you go into the more extreme things, you would have things like gangs in the inner city, or even like debutante things for the upper class. There are just these organizations that people belong to where they can find people who are similar to them so that they can find a group of people who will accept them for who they are. And that's how you get your need for acceptance met. Well, again, one of the problems that you have with that is what happens when you do something that particular group or your group of friends or whatever doesn't like, and all of a sudden you don't feel accepted. Or what if you can't find a group of people that accept you? Or what happens when you move and go and you have to start all over again and you start to have this need for acceptance? Well, the answer to that in 2019, as it were, has been social media, and actually since before 2019. And the idea is with social media is that you can just find a group of people that you can just have all kind of interactions with. Well, we've already seen breakdowns of that in society. We've seen very high suicide rates, very high depression rates among people who have very highly active social media accounts. And so because this way of meeting that need is being met by people, it's always susceptible to failure. That's just one of the things of having your needs met by people, is that people will disappoint. People will have times of letting you down and failure. So even if you have a lot of friends, even if you have an active social media account, or even if you have actual real friends and you're part of something, there's still going to be times when your need for acceptance or being, truly feeling like, do these people really know who I am? That's still going to come into question, and you're still going to have struggles with it. Now, God has said that he accepts us for who we are. And God actually does know us even better than you know yourself. And sometimes you can hear that statement and be like, how can he know me better than I know myself? And the answer to that is pretty simple. He created you. He created you before you had any wounds and before you had any, things that just alter us, defense mechanism, flesh patterns. He knows us as we were created. He knows us in all the things we're dealing with. He knows our every thought. He knows everything about us. And he created us that way. Actually, your personality, the way that you are, maybe even some things that you question whether or not they're good, the way that you are is the way that God created you. Now, sometimes some of the things that we have might have been shifted away from the way God created us because of wounds or flesh patterns that we've developed. But your basic personality, the way that you are and who you are when you're not dealing with horrible things, that's the way God created you. So even when we take who we were created without the wounds and flesh patterns and all that stuff, and we add to it all these things that kind of mess with us and change the way we respond to circumstances, it doesn't matter to God, because he knows who we are, and he absolutely loves us and accepts us exactly as we are, because he made us and he created us and he's our Father. And so when we can just look at that and look at the truth of saying, hey, my need for acceptance is from God, then, there's nothing wrong with having friends. It's great to have friends, great to belong to groups, great to have all these people that are on our side, but we don't have to rely on that to have our need for acceptance met, because we're already coming from a place of it being filled with God. So that enables us to be a better friend, to be someone who's more accepting of other people, to be able to look at people and say, I see who you really are. Paul said he no longer regards people according to the flesh. And what he was saying was not some weird, mysterious thing. He was just simply saying he's come to a place where he can see people by their spirit, by who God created them to be. And it doesn't matter what they're doing on the outside. He can look at them and say, you are a person who is a child of God, made in his image, and I absolutely can accept you, and I can accept you exactly as you are. And that's how we can be, but only after our need for acceptance is met by God. Getting it met by the culture will always result in some feeling of emptiness, brokenness, abandonment, disappointment, which can lead to depression, can ultimately lead to suicide if left gone too long, or can just lead to having a really bad day. But when we get that need met by God, then we always come from a place of fulfillment. So next week, we get to talk about worth.